From Public Radio International, this is The World. A co-production of the BBC World Service, PRI, and WGBH Boston. It's Tuesday, June 1st. I'm Marco Werman. There's growing diplomatic pressure on Israel a day after its commanders stormed ships that were trying to break the blockade of Gaza. The incident strains President Obama's tense ties with Prime Minister Netanyahu, but that's okay.
Yes, you may fight with the Israelis, and those American presidents who've succeeded have fought with the Israelis, but the reality is you also have to work out a relationship with an Israeli prime minister if you want to succeed.
Also a symbolic end to the Green Zone. Now this news.
BBC News with David Legg. There's growing diplomatic pressure on Israel a day after its commandos stormed ships trying to break the blockade of Gaza. NATO's Secretary-General Anders Fogh Rasmussen condemned the loss of lives in the assault and demanded the immediate release of ships and civilians. At least 9 pro-Palestinian activists were killed. At least 4 of them were Turkish. Dominic Hughes reports.
NATO ambassadors added their voices to those of the European Union and the United Nations, calling for a prompt, impartial, credible and transparent investigation into the raid on the Gaza aid flotilla. The 90-minute-long meeting had been called by Turkey, although a spokesman said there was no demand that the alliance take collective action against Israel. And the wording of the Secretary-General's statement reflected that of the UN Security Council, condemning the acts which have led to the tragedy rather than the Israeli armed forces directly.
The Rafah border crossing between Egypt and the Gaza Strip has been reopened on the orders of President Hosni Mubarak to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. The crossing point is the only one not controlled by the Israelis. It was closed by Egypt after the Islamist movement Hamas took control of Gaza 3 years ago. It's not clear whether the move is a change of policy or just a temporary measure. A new blood test for lung cancer, which the makers hope will vastly improve diagnosis of the disease, is becoming commercially available across the United States for the first time this week. The test identifies defences activated by the human body in response to the earlier stages of the cancer, raising the possibility of spotting the illness months or even years before symptoms develop. Johnny Hogg has the details.
The makers of the early CDT lung test hope it will help more people survive lung cancer. Currently, sufferers are often diagnosed on the basis of their symptoms, by which time the illness can be too advanced to treat. With this new technique, doctors will be able to trace antibodies in the blood much earlier. The test will be available first in the United States and then in Britain, before potentially becoming available worldwide. The scientists behind it say that with further research, it could also be adapted to diagnose many other common cancers.
President Obama says that if an investigation into the Gulf of Mexico oil spill shows that laws were broken, those responsible will be brought to justice. He was speaking after talks with the leaders of a commission of inquiry into the huge and continuing spillage. Mr. Obama said the commission would report back to him in 6 months, and he said he was determined to avoid such an incident ever happening again.
If the laws on our books are insufficient to prevent such a spill, the laws must change. If oversight was inadequate to enforce these laws, oversight has to be reformed. If our laws were broken, leading to this death and destruction, my solemn pledge is that we will bring those responsible to justice on behalf of the victims of this catastrophe and the people of the Gulf region.
World News from the BBC. An American Army officer accused of murdering 13 of his colleagues at Fort Hood in Texas last November has appeared in court for the first time. Major Nidal, who was left paralyzed when security guards shot him, sat in court in a wheelchair wearing his Army uniform. A judge must decide whether he's fit to stand trial. Pakistan's military says it's driven the Taliban out of a strategically important region close to the border with Afghanistan. The government offensive in Orakzai was launched 10 weeks ago. Almost every day there have been reports of clashes and airstrikes.